So, without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce This is another in a series of live broadcasts enjoying the creative sounds of music and harmony. Hope you enjoy. Don't touch that dial. Keep it locked. Tuned in and turned on.
Welcome to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro. Not just numbers, not just stats. It's about what they mean. And now, your host, the Maestro.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with your boy, the Maestro. That's me. Thank you for listening to all of our podcasts and reading all of our article offerings in SimWorld Hoops. Your feedback is so appreciated. You definitely keep us on point and you definitely give us plenty of things to talk about. So let's get right into it. Everybody's been asking for some story time, so I'm going to give you some story time as it relates to where we are at this particular point in the SimWorld Hoops season as we move to the race to one. When the WNBA was looking to expand their franchises, a few groups got together to put in bids in order to offer for a franchise. We moved into particular cities. And I interviewed with a couple of these groups. To this day, I still have no idea how they got my information to be brought on as a basketball consultant. One group I said yes to, I thought was a very smart group of people who had an amazing marketing plan, who actually had a production plan that was ready to be implemented on the spot. And that was better than the other groups that I'd interviewed with. So I told them yes, and we were able to move forward right away. So my initial duties were to sort of be the director of basketball operations. In other words, I was being asked to put together a team that would be eligible for signing at that particular point whenever the team was going to be actualized by the league. I had thousands of tapes from working as a coach, both men and women's basketball. I had thousands of tapes from being a recruiter, acting as in other similar positions for teams. So I started putting together all of my college film I had in women's basketball, as well as getting new a lot film. And I'm saying film, even though it was, some of it was film. It was VHS tape. You guys will know what that is. I'll draw you a picture, as well as MP4s on laptops and then eventually tablets. So here I am. And I'm narrowing it down to the players that would be eligible in the window that the team would be actualized. And I'm also looking at how can I go and see some of these players, maybe even interview some of them. My biggest move was, even after studying tape and studying film and making my list and doing background and everything else, was to go to tournaments. Conference tournaments, eventually the national championship tourney, everything else. And this is what I was looking for. I had a pretty good idea of how well that these athletes were able to play. And this is speaking to the people here in SimWorld Hoops. People know you got game. And that game doesn't always translate to wins for your team, but it does translate to something else. And that is something that we always talk about you can bring to every single game, and that is effort. You can always do what you need to do to put your team in a position to win. So I looked for effort. Yes, I looked for other things too. I looked for how they treated the people around them, how they treated the people who handed them water bottles, how they treated the people who handed them towels and took their towels away. Did they say thank you? What type of person were they on and off the court, specifically more off the court? But looking at them in these tournaments, even the teams that were coming in the very last position, specifically in the smaller conferences, and they were not given a chance to advance, how did they play? What did they do? Were they encouraging to their teammates as the last seed was playing the number one seed, and they were getting blown out? Were they still diving for balls on the floor? Were they still clapping their hands and motivating their teammates that were on the floor when they were on the bench? Were they crying about playing time? Were they being disinterested and telling jokes or looking up into the stands instead of being engaged in the game? All those things made a huge difference of whether or not I considered even pursuing a player to interview them or talk to them or offer them a spot at a tryout camp, because it told me that if you're not going to be engaged here when it doesn't matter, that means you're only going to play when it does matter. And that means if this team happens to start off as most new franchises do, I know things have been different lately, But if teams start out a little less of a positive record, are you going to check out in the middle of a season? And now, by the way, it's your job. You don't have classes anymore. You don't have other things to deal with. This is your job. There's no eligibility questions, and you're still going to check out? No, can't trust you. I'm going to have to see something better. And oh, by the way, how does that translate across to what we see today outside of SimWorld Hoops? How many NBA players with immense loads of talent are looking for franchises? Because as good as they are, there are a lot of teams that do not want that toxicity in the locker room because they don't feel it's worth it. And that starts with everything that we talked about earlier. What type of person are there? Yes, there are some franchises that will bite the bullet, take somebody on, knowing that they're bringing on a person who is not positive, but they believe that talent is going to be good enough for them to win. And then when that personality takes over and all of a sudden they become a distraction in the locker room, the team suffers even more. And by the way, more and more now with information that is available with people's social media feeds and things like that. And the fact that if you are an athlete of any sort of note, you're always on camera somewhere. There is too much that people can know about you as you effort to move forward. So you really need to be careful and really need to be smart. And on top of all of this, don't be something different than what you are. You have to be honest as well, because that's the only thing that you can maintain every day. But if you can find a way in your tool of tricks, along with your post move, along with your crossover, along with your no look passes and all that other stuff, to work out a way to become a team first athlete, to become a people first person, trust me when I tell you, you have an opportunity to go a long way, not only in the game, but in life. And I'll get you to the end of the story. The franchise actually did get awarded to the group that I was working with. Unfortunately for them, they ran into financial difficulties, were not able to start, had to delay their start by a couple of seasons. At this particular point, I had moved on. I still helped them at an advisory role, but it actually managed to work out pretty well for them. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they've won at least one WNBA championship. So most of the people who started it are still there. So it's really good to see that good effort and good hard work pays off. And sometimes you have to stick with a little bit longer than maybe you thought you had before. Just know that hard work will always pay off for you. Thank you for listening to this half of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. We'll come back with just a little more ideas about what's happening here in the race to one.
Thank you for listening to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro.
Want to get involved? Bring it. Drop in discord.gg/SimWorld NBA.
If you have the brain,
Join as a coach.
If you have the game,
Join as a player.
See the game, be the game. But now, back to Talk Dirty to Me with
The Maestro.
Once again, for the Soul Children's String section, y'all.
Let's get back to some wonderful sounds.
And welcome back to the second half of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. In this half, we're going to talk about playoff strategies for the teams that are in the race to one. Now, strategy is mostly determined by the coaches according to the talent that they have and what they're looking at. It always starts with the bench. Who is my bench? And yes, I said who is, not who are, who is. Because I look at the bench as one entity that will provide the support for those who have started the game, but the bench carries the bulk of the load for all of the dirty work. Yeah, I had to get dirty in there. The dirty work for a team to be successful in every game. Now, there are thoughts that, well, bench play doesn't travel. And I disagree with that. Strong teams that have shown us dynasty-worthy win-loss records have constantly had players who came off the bench at the right time, at the right moment, at the right everything to give their teams a chance to win. Playoff strategies fall in two ways. Some coaches shorten their bench. I'm going to go with my proven starters. Notice I said proven starters. And I'm going to go with the players that have given me the numbers I have seen and feel I need. They're now going to get more time. Which means if you're a player and you've been on the team and the coach hasn't seen certain things that they're looking at out for you, and this is not pointing at anybody in particular, I'm just giving you generalities here. For instance, if you don't hustle in practice, if you don't show a work ethic in film study, if you don't show certain things that proves to the coach that you're going to do what you need to do when you're in the game, you might not get that shot as they're moving into the race to one in terms of being someone they're going to trust to come off the bench. Everything for coaches. Rephrase. Mostly everything for coaches starts with what they see in practice, the work ethic that you bring there, because that is where you prove to the coach they can trust you. They can trust you to do what you need to do to help support and feed the team everything they need to be successful. If coaches don't see that in practice, they don't expect to see it in a game. It's really simple. If you're going to complain about not getting time, start at the very point of what am I doing in practice to show the coach that I can do everything that's being asked of me? Start there. And if you really want to be a successful teammate, if you really want to be a contributory member of a team, go to the coach and ask one question. What do I need do to prove to you I can give you what you need for us to be successful? Now, I'm not saying every coach is going to have the answer. We know that coaches are not infallible. Coaches are not the perfect stalwart to whatever. We know that. We're not children here, okay? However, you have to start there and prove that you will do what you need to do to that coach to make sure that you've covered every single base you can cover before you take your grievance someplace else. Because if you're going to bring grievance and you've not mitigated those grievances, guess what the other team is looking at? Man, do we really want that cat? Because if they're going to come here, it doesn't go right, they're going to complain here too. All of a sudden now you got that dirty mark on you, fair or not, it's going to be on your V-Day. And that can only mean one thing. People are going to look at your side eye. And that's the last thing you want, especially if you're doing everything you can do to be not only a better player, but more importantly, a better person and to contribute to those around you. Those coaches that would shorten their bench, they're going to go to the proven players. The other teams might have a proven bench. In other words, as we talked about when I did my Dirty segment, there are teams that have 6, 7, and 8, and in a couple of cases, 9 players who have racked up dirty stat lines throughout the year, which means they've filled up everything from points to rebounds to assists to steals and blocks. I love when you guys send me messages, by the way, telling me that you got a charge in there too. That just gives you an extra star by your name in my book. So just know that's what's up, okay? But those teams have more players that can contribute, and so they're going to be strategically placed in order to support their team, and those coaches have more to work with. It all starts with that playoff strategy philosophy of what do I need to do best to put these players in a position to perform their best in order for us to win and move forward. And sometimes it is not as easy as one might think. Sometimes it's not as easy or not as simple as just scoring more points. Because if you don't do certain other aspects of the game, I know I've been harping on rebounds, I do that. But if you've not been rebounding, if you've not been stopping possessions and turning your rebounds into points, into effective possessions, you are giving away half the game. That puts you on top and puts the other team on the bottom. I know that was a really scientific thing, right? Nobel Peace Prize, here I come. So, or Nobel, Google it. I don't know. So when you look at this and these two strategies, it's going to be interesting to see which benches or which coaches feel as though they have the bench to help carry them through in this race to one. You think it's fast and furious now? Wait till the playoff starts. Wait till that pressure kicks in. Wait till all those moments, all those times of worry and concern and panic and all those things start pulling in, who's going to be strong enough to squash it down? Who's going to be strong enough to lean on their game? And the people I look for, the people whose heart rate slows down, the people who watch the second hand on the clock beat a little bit slower because they're doing exactly what they've been doing all season long, playing on that level that will give their team an opportunity to take advantage of every single action that comes in front of them. Oh, family, that's awesome. When you see that happen, there is nothing like that kind of game, and I can't wait to see it coming up here in the Race to One for SimWorld Hoops. Thank you for checking out this episode of the Talk Dirty to Me podcast. As always, feedback, let me know what you think. Let me know what else you want to hear about, and just let me know. I'll let your boy. Come on, real ones know what's up. Who you got? Okay, I'm finally going to answer a question everybody's been asking me about, so this is what's going on. All right, you ready? Got your pens and pencil out? Here we go. Lengthening a wire, for instance, will reduce the current intensity produced in it by a given potential difference. If 20 volts will produce a current intensity of 1 ampere in a wire 1 meter long, the same 20 volts will produce only 0.5 amperes in a wire of the same
I didn't realize we were starting right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for checking out the Talk Dirty to Me podcast with the Maestro. Drop a tag below and give us a piece of your mind.
So, see you next time and talk dirty to me.